Guys, welcome back to another Brookhouse's YouTube video. Today we got our top 24 running backs for week 5 of fantasy football.
And before we get into it, we created a massive free fantasy football group chat. That's what it looks like down below. There's so much stuff on there. We got our full rankings, all top 36 RBs ranked, 48 wide receivers, 20 tight ends, 20 QBs. It has trade advice, waiver wire targets, open chats. You guys can even DM us your questions. Absolutely free. It's the first link in the description if you want to join the group chat.
First player, Christian McCaffrey. Finally had a 20-point game against the Cardinals last week. He looked awesome. This week he's playing the Niners. It's not a great matchup, but CMC always has sky-high upside.
And at RB2, another elite RB1, we have Saquon Barkley. 18 points last week, 22 the week before. He had 33 in week 1. He's been balling out against the Packers. Not a great matchup, not terrible. He's still an elite RB1.
First player in the next tier is Austin Eckler. He had a crazy game last week, over 30 points, 3 touchdowns. Should have another great game against the Browns.
And next, we have Jonathan Taylor as an RB1. Again, he might not play against Broncos. It's a tough matchup. Jonathan Taylor, he used to be our RB1 overall. Now he's moved down to RB4 for the week. Not an amazing matchup. Doesn't have a lot of PPR upside. The Colts also just aren't good enough to support him like they were last year. The defense is worse. The offense is worse with Matt Ryan, so he's our RB4.
RB5, we got Derrick Henry. Last 2 weeks, over 20 fantasy points. He's been looking like old Derrick Henry. Matchup against Washington is not great, but he still has super high upside being Derrick Henry, and that offensive line is still solid.
And next player, we got Nick Chubb. He has an amazing matchup against the Chargers. The Texans were down in this game, and somehow Pierce managed to still get over 20 fantasy points. It might have even been over 25 fantasy points. Burkhead had 15 fantasy points. The Texans running backs went crazy, and Nick Chubb, he's been a beast so far, averaging close to 20 points per game. He's been amazing. Love the matchup against the Chargers.
And the last player in this tier is Dalvin Cook. Yes, he has been super disappointing compared to his first round draft capital, but great matchup against the Bears. Bears have been terrible against running backs. Really hope Dalvin Cook can have a big week this week.
And our first player in the borderline RB1 tier is Joe Mixon. Last year, when he versus the Ravens, he put up over 30 fantasy points. He went crazy. The Ravens defense also isn't looking amazing. Joe Mixon last week, 24 carries, finally got in the end zone. We like the matchup this week.
And next at RB9, we got Leonard Fournette. Rashad White did seem to take a lot of his touches, but Fournette still had a solid game, still had 18 fantasy points, and we like the matchup a lot against the Falcons.
And next up at RB10, we got Aaron Jones. Week 1, Dylan looked better, but every single week after that, Aaron Jones has taken over this backfield. Last week, 14.5 points. He's got 3 receptions every single game. Has very high PPR upside we thought before the season, but he looks to be just very solid every single week. Against the Giants, it's a good matchup. He's our RB10.
And at running back 11, we have James Robinson. He was a sit for us last week against the Eagles. That was a tough matchup. Has a way better matchup against the Texans. Texans have been brutally bad against running backs. Love the upside for James Robinson this week.
And last player in the borderline RB1 tier is Alvin Kamar. He's been super disappointing this year, doesn't have a game over 8 fantasy points, and again, he might not even play this week. He's probably going to be questionable, but if he does play, he has a solid matchup against Seattle. Jamal Williams just had a pretty nice day against them, and Alvin Kamar is just waiting to have this breakout game. We like him as our RB12 this week.
And the first player in elite running back 2 is Damien Pierce. Another player who's going up against James Robinson, should have a big game for both running backs this week. Jaguars, again, another team that's been really, really bad against running backs, and Pierce just went crazy against the Chargers, like his upside this week.
And next up at RB14, we have Naji Harris. He has been massively disappointing. We loved him last week against the Jets, only could get 7 fantasy points. He had no catches, no touchdowns, but we do think Kenny Pickett does make this offense better. Trubisky, absolutely horrible. Najee can get some catches. He might be solid. But again, he has a super tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills. I think they're number 2 right now against RB, so he lowers on the rankings.
And next up, we got Josh Jacobs. He went absolutely crazy last week against the Broncos. 28 carries, over 140 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. He even had 6 targets and 5 catches. He was absolutely getting fed, and this week he's going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who have struggled against running backs as well. Expect a big game for Josh Jacobs this week.
And last player in this tier is James Carno. He's been pretty disappointing, only has 1 game over 11 fantasy points, and he has a really tough matchup this week. The Eagles just absolutely shut down Robinson and ETN. Cardinals, we do expect them to maybe go down this game, maybe have to throw it more. We like James Carno because he has massive touchdown upside, but the matchup is terrible.
First player in the next tier is Ramondre Stevenson. Yes, Damien Harris did have more carries last week, but Ramondre had more snaps, more targets, still had similar carries. They're going up against the Lions this week. Lions, I believe they're 31st against running backs. almost dead last. They've been terrible. Upside is super high for the Patriots running backs this week.
And next up, right after Stevenson, we have Damien Harris. Again, Detroit, a perfect matchup, 31st against RBs. He had Damien Harris, 18 carries. He had the touchdown. And another thing, Penny just went crazy against the Lions. This matchup, again, is just so perfect. We love Damien Harris as well.
Next up, we got Miles Sanders, another player who got absolutely fed last week. 27 carries, over 130 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, even had 3 targets. Again, he was phenomenal last week. And going up against the Cardinals, it's a solid matchup. His upside is super high now that he's getting absolutely fed.
And our last RB2 on the week is David Montgomery. The matchup is decent. Vikings haven't been terrible, haven't been great, and this is assuming he does play. He is going to go into this game questionable. Obviously, with his injury, Khalil Herbert's going to take some snaps, but Monty, if he plays, we still expect him to be the RB1. He's a mid-solid RB2.
First player in the next tier is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He has been super good, but super touchdown dependent. He's lucky this week as his matchup against the Raiders. It's a good one. Raiders, again, bad against running backs. If he can score, he'll be good. If he doesn't score, he'll probably have a low week.
Next up, another borderline RB2 is Jamal Williams. He had a really good week last week. He destroyed Seahawks, I think over 24 fantasy points. But the thing is, he only played 50% of snaps. He wasn't on the field a ton, and the matchup this week is very tough. The Patriots are 6th against RBs. Very tough matchup. He's a borderline RB2.
And at running back 23, we got Bree Saul. He is slowly becoming more and more of this clear RB1 for the New York Jets. Matchup is not great against the Dolphins, but Breece Hall, again, is playing more snaps, seems to be getting a lot of the red zone work, and he has somewhat solid upside.
And our last RB on the video, our RB24, Devin Singletary. He is taking over this backfield. Last week, he played 88% of snaps, had only 11 fantasy points, but the matchup this week against the Steelers is very good. Had 5 targets for 4 catches. But if we look at week 3, he again played 73% of snaps, but had 11 targets, over 24 fantasy points. He was going crazy. He's taking over this backfield, and we love him against the Steelers.
And guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, hit the like and the subscribe, and check out the completely free group chat called Chalkboard. It's the top link in the description. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys next time.